Song for the Imps. Have a song for the Imps. There we go then. Come on, let's get some of the lads together. Let's have a go, yeah? Okay, yeah, we're on. Go on, fellas. Get around the piano. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. Are you ready? Come on, you lot. Go on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Reds is their name. Stinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our...
Back again. Morning all, how we doing? I'm up here in the Lincolnshire Wolds. It's a misty-ish day, but it's still pretty beautiful. Walking the dog. He's over in the field. It's just beginning to grow up a little bit, so he's getting that kind of, you know, where dogs bounce through the grass and stuff like that. Spring was in the air. It's clouded over a little bit. There's a bit of wind. So let me know what the audio experience is like, please, as well. I've got the phone kind of tucked into my sleeve, so I'm hoping to protect it from the wind. I did have some advice from Ben, the tech guy, told me to order a USB 3 mic or something and plug it in, and that'd be good. Bought one, plugged it in, don't work. So for phones, you have to back engineer the USB port or something. I don't know. It's all bollocks to me. So we're back on the shit sound, but that means it doesn't go on TalkSport. It's exclusive for you. But potentially at the end of this broadcast, I might even take it down online and leave it for my patrons. So we'll see how we go. Morning to Bry Fox. Boom. Good morning, Gaz. Good morning, Bry. Good morning to Mr. Bull. How are you doing? Good morning to Matthew Walker. And Bry says we've got perfect sound, which normally when it's my voice, perfect, I think is stretching it, but that obviously means the quality is not so bad. So we're all good. So I thought I'd do a quick dog walk, mainly because it's a relatively nice day, and there's a little bit to talk about. I mean, first of all, those who enjoy the podcast, that'll be out tonight if Ben can get it edited. So we've got a game Good Friday. So what we're planning on doing with our audio this week is dropping a podcast tonight. That will be me and Ben with a preview from Charlie. We will then be hoping to drop a second podcast during the day on Saturday. That'll be looking back at Friday's game and looking ahead to Plymouth again, hopefully with a preview of the Plymouth game from Charlie. So could be a double header this weekend. Lots and lots of things to do. Ben says should be able to get the pod out tonight. Charlie says morning, Gary. We've already spoken, working hard behind the scenes. And morning to Harry Jackson. So Sheffield Wednesday, look, me and Ben will... oh, hang on. Charlie says, yeah, we've got a preview planned. That's for tomorrow night. So that's good. I think he's with Argyle Life, so that should be good. So we'll talk about Sheffield Wednesday a bit tonight on the podcast. Just to touch on it really briefly, it felt like one of those results where a draw feels like a win. I think we've had a lot of those this season. You know, talking to people before the game, it felt like we were going there expecting to be lambs to the slaughter. First 15 minutes, I thought that was going to be the case, and then we showed some real resilience, some real application, and we ground out a draw. And, you know, the second half, had it been at home and had it again been against Accrington or Morecambe, it would definitely been classed as tough watch. But because it was against a team with the likes of Smith and Gregory, who've played regular championship football, Will Vokes has done the same, Barry Bannon on £21,000 a week, you know, that would pay for, as I understand it, any 7 of our first team players that you wanted to pick. You couldn't pick a cumulative total higher than £21,000. So I think that says it all. So, you know, it was a real victory in terms of what we expected when we went. Just wasn't in victory in terms of goals, but, you know, I think that's probably acceptable. And you look at the teams at the top there, there's Sheffield Wednesday, there's Ipswich, there's Plymouth, there's Bolton, there's Derby. You know, only one defeat in all of those games. I've skipped Peterborough, obviously, Barnsley, yeah, only one defeat. So it just shows, I think, that we're on the right lines. And if we are on the right lines, it means there's highlights this season. And you know, you'll talk to some people and they'll tell you that it's been turgid, it's been a tough watch, etc., etc. We've seen Lincoln City lose once at home this season. We've had some great away days, albeit draws. at Derby and at Sheffield Wednesday, wins against Barnsley and Ipswich. There's been some real highlights, and if our form against teams in and around us had been a little bit better, then we'd be going into April with zero relegation worries at all. As it is, I think that we've got very few worries. But 2011 and 1987, they hang heavy, don't they, over us? So we've got this weekend where you would hope Cheltenham at home, Plymouth away, potential there for 3 or 4 points. I think Plymouth are the sort of team I think that are a Lincoln City delight. And there's not many like Plymouth in this division because they're a top team. They attack at will. They'll always come at you. But defensively, I called it in our home draw with them. I think that they're really susceptible. And if you get a goal against them, especially after what happened to them this weekend in the cup final, where they lost 4-0 or whatever, 5-0, 4-0, I think, you can beat them. And I think they're beatable. I think we can go to Plymouth and get a result. The draw and the 4 points for me is Cheltenham, who are going to come and make it difficult for us at home. I think there's 4 points there. If we take 4 points from these games, it takes us on to that magical 50 barrier. I think 50 keeps you up this season. I think, is it 38? I think that Accrington are on in the last spot with 8 games to go. Are they going to get 12 points from 8 games? I don't think they are. I don't actually think that they're going to get 10, to be honest. So I think that we're right within touching distance of safety. It's all but confirmed, but all but confirmed isn't confirmed. So we go into April, not with squeaky bums, just with, we spend a lot of time looking back. I've just been telling my dog, walking all the way down this road, there's a big road. You see here, this track, that road there, and then my house is over where those trees are. So all along that road, all he's done, he's kept looking back. I keep saying to him, there's no point in looking back. You've got to look forward. And then here I am coming on to you saying, looking back at 2011, no point. Look at it now. Look at it in the context of this season. This hasn't been a bad season. It hasn't. We've been beaten at once at home. Okay, we talk about the run. There's a lot of draws. I buy all of that. I get all of that. But it hasn't been a bad season for Lincoln City, because at the beginning of this season, not the top 20 pod, suggested that we would finish in the bottom 4. Many fans watching either at home now or listening in at a later date messaged me with their predictions, had Lincoln City in and around the bottom 4. And going into the last couple of games of the season, there's a potential for us to finish, I think, probably 14th to 16th. I think that's probably going to be our level. If somebody had offered you that at the beginning of the season, we would have taken it all day long. And if they said, oh, well, at that point, you will have lost 3 games against the top 6, and 2 of them will have been against Peterborough, you're kind of going, what? We've not lost against Sheffield Wednesday, against Ipswich, against Derby. Jesus, these are teams that have won European competitions, have been in the Premier League, have won domestic cups. They're big clubs for people of a certain age, likes of me that collected Panini stickers in the late 80s and early 90s. These are big clubs, not beaten. How? Well, we've not been beaten by those teams because there are several players who form the backbone of this team that could quite easily be in for a shout with Player of the Year. And last year, Player of the Year was literally just the player who had played the most games because he had stayed fit. He was the best player, don't get me wrong, but he had played the most games. And that, I think he was on 40-something and the next person was on 30-something. We just had so many injuries, so many inconsistencies. So to come into this season thinking there are actually one, in my opinion, of 4 players that could be in with a shout for Player of the Year, but probably 2 that stand right out, maybe 3 that stand right out. So I've picked 4 players to go through now, and I'm really interested to know what some of you think. Because I'm covering up half my phone, I'm not seeing comments come up all that early. So my apologies if I miss them out and have to go back at the end. And also, please do keep me informed if the sound's bad. So the first player who is a tentative, I think he will get votes a little bit further down, because the voting will start very soon. I don't know if the slips and everything will still be out on the bar or if it's all online, but it usually starts going through April. And I think we've got to start thinking about it. We've got to start thinking who our Player of the Year is. And for me, the 4th one is somebody who might come in 3rd. Like last year, I think Luis Fiorini did. Probably wasn't going to win Player of the Year because he'd had an inconsistent spell and he'd been out for a little while. But on the whole, was a player that you kind of go, yeah, he did all right for us, actually. So people will put him as their 2nd or 3rd pick. So I think a 2nd or 3rd pick for a lot of people this season will be Ben House. So he's my number 4. And the reason I've gone for Ben House, because it's difficult to name an attacker as your player of the year when your XG is the 5th lowest in the division, because you just haven't created the opportunities for him. But with Ben, I think it's tireless work rate. I think with Ben House, you put Ben House on the pitch, you know that 90 minutes later, he's not going to have stopped running. He's going to do what you want him to do. And look, you know, a lot of you would do that. A lot of you will be Sunday league footballers, and you'll probably be, you know, you go out and you run for 90 minutes and you think, you know, it's not that hard to put the application in. I think with Ben, though, it's that he's got a dead degree of intelligence with it. So we've had players in the past who, and this season, who run a lot but don't really go anywhere. And two players that stick in my mind from the past who perfectly kind of live up to that would be Derek Asamoah and Kevin Gall. They did an awful lot of running, but not with an awful lot of end product. Now, a lot of Ben's running is without the ball, but it's in a press. We've played a press. We have done very well with it against bigger clubs. That's why we haven't really been beaten by a lot of the top teams. Didn't see a lot of the press, to be fair, on Saturday. But teams that want to come, knock it out across the back, he's been absolutely brilliant. Yeah, we talked last year, I think, a lot about Tom Hopper being a brilliant defensive forward because he gets back, he wins headers, that sort of thing. Ben House is a defensive forward, but in a very different way, because he's a defensive forward that plays in the attacking half. He's the first line of defence. Football these days is very much about possession, coming out from the back. It never used to be. There'll be people watching this who remember going to watch, you know, in the days of Sam Ellis and in the days of Steve Thompson, even in the days, to be fair, of Keith Alexander, where lower league football was very much back to front quickly, get it down in the final third. Your defending started when the ball landed in the final third. These days, against a lot of teams, your defending starts the second their keeper gets hold of the ball. That's when you're defending. That's when you're trying to stop whatever it is that the opposition are going to do. They don't just hoof it forward to a big man now. And even teams that didn't particularly play long ball. Remember, Wimbledon, Sheffield United, us, we got labelled as long ball teams, but there were teams that didn't even play long ball that would do exactly that, get it down in the final third. That's not the case. So with Ben House, he's the first line of defence. Tom used to chase a lot of things down. I don't think he had the same intelligence in terms of pressing. And let's not rule out Ben's goals. He scored some good goals this season. He's not, you know, I saw a lot of criticism of Harry Kane for scoring in relatively small games. I don't think it's justified, but I'm not going there. But we're not talking about a player here that scored, you know, 5 penalties, 2 against Bristol Rovers, and then nothing else in open play other than against Everton under 21s or anything like that. We're talking about a player that scored goals in big games. Yes, he did it against Bristol Rovers when they had a crappy defence. But he's also done it against, I think it was Ipswich or Bolton at home from the free kick. He did it at Ipswich away. He pops up with vital goals. He works incredibly hard. He's a young man. He's an outside shout for Player of the Year. He's not my shout for Player of the Year. Some people might pick him, and I think he'll be there or thereabouts in the top 4. And what I've tended to find is that away Player of the Year usually goes either to the Player of the Year because he's just been so outstanding, or it goes to the more offbeat pick for Player of the Year. You know, not quite Player of the Year, but if you give him away Player of the Year, it's a recommendation that, or it's a commendation that he's done particularly well. I think that Ben House could sneak in the away Player of the Year. You never know. So he'd be my 4th pick. My 3rd pick won't be with us next season, unfortunately. Not confirmed, but 90% certainly won't be with us. That's Regan Poole. So I'm going for Regan Poole. Again, look, it's consistency for a start. I mean, he's missed, 1 game through injury in the league all season. He's played right centre-back. He's played centre-back in a 4. He's played centre-back in a right centre-back in a 3. He's played right wing-back. I think he even played, you know, out right-back, proper right-back rather than right wing-back. He's versatile. He's another 100%er, and I kind of cringe at that, because every footballer at this level should be 100%er. As Roy Keane would say, that's his job. Do you know what I mean? He's paid to go out and play for 90 minutes on a Saturday. But you can tell the ones whose body language changes when you go a goal down. You can tell the ones who, not even intentionally, but get affected when something negative happens, you know, when there's a missed kick. Or young Sean Rowan, great player, wonderful player, going to be a really, really big name for us. But there's been a couple of times where, you know, I think he is emotionally been affected by something that's happened. Classic example, the goal he gave away against Exeter. You know, he found it hard to shake off. He's a young player. So when I say Regan's 100%, Regan makes a mistake, he's the same Regan 30 seconds later. I think that's really important. In February, March, even in March, he actually led our goals and assists. He got 1 goal, 1 assist. That's 2, obviously. I didn't know I was good at maths. Yeah, our strikers didn't get that. So he's become a threat, or a little bit of a threat in the box. He's good at set pieces. He's good at recycling play. He's a good defender. I think he's an adequate attacker. If he moves into the Championship, I think he's almost certainly going to be asked to play on the right of a 3 because he's comfortable bringing the ball out. He's mobile, but he's also a bit of a warrior. We will miss Regan Poole, but the Lincoln City have been better for having him. And would I rather that we hadn't had him and we'd bought somebody in that transfer window we could have moved on? I don't know. He took a lot of stick, by the way. Let's not forget that, because everybody's dribbling over Regan Poole and they're getting excited and, oh, he's going to be a big loss and all this sort of stuff. But there was a huge swell of anti-Regan Poole rhetoric in the first half of last season and after he joined. We don't need another right back. He's not an attacking right back. Regan Poole's a lot. I've read it all, and there was one guy in particular. I don't know if he's watching. I'm not going to name him. It's not fair. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Absolutely slated him every single time he did anything wrong. He absolutely slated him. There's not very many people doing that now. That's because he's had a great season, I think, for us. A really, really good season for us. There's no doubt that he's going to go on and play in the Championship regularly. I think it's easier for a defender like him to go and play in the Championship regularly because he's flexible and can adapt to some, certainly 3 at the back and certainly much more possession based as well. He'd be my 3rd pick for player of the season. Now, the top 2, it's really hard to separate. Both brought in over the summer, both been absolutely superb for us. So my 2nd pick, and I think the player of the year will be one of these 2, and I'm not quite sure which will get it and which one will not. But my 2nd pick for my 2nd place pick is Carl Rushworth. Now, we've had people talk about lone goalkeepers and you can't have a lone goalkeeper. And right up until the COVID summer, I would have fought against a lone keeper tooth and nail. You've got to have your own keeper. He's got to be part of the club. You've got to have a Josh Vickers. I ignored the short-term Matt Gilks. I ignored the short-term Ryan Alsop, both who did really well for the club. For me, you had to have your own goalkeeper. And then we signed Alex Palmer. And Alex Palmer, up until this season, was the best goalkeeper I'd seen in a Lincoln City shirt because he was big, he made great saves, he commanded his box. Yes, he dropped a couple of clangers. I can't remember whether it was Fleetwood or Swindon, maybe both, but he dropped a couple of clangers in games. But on the whole, he was superb. He really was. And he left and we got Josh Griffiths in, and Josh Griffiths was a very good goalkeeper at times. There was debate who's better, Palmer or Griffiths. I think it was probably Palmer, but again, Griffiths was a good solid keeper for us for a period of time. And then we signed Carl Rushworth, and I remember seeing him the first time in goal, and I began to worry. I thought he looks a bit small, and it's such an easy trap to fall into. Small goalkeeper, not good enough. But some of our goalkeepers over the past have not been the biggest. Paul Farman and Alan Marriott, and they are both legends at this football club. And young Sam Long's not the biggest, but again is hopefully going to be part of the future. So I saw Carl Rushworth and it just worried me a little bit. And Joe, I've never felt worried with him in goal. After Alex Palmer made a couple of mistakes, there was a time where you thought, oh God, here we go again. With Josh Griffiths, he made a mistake in his first game. So there was always that worry at the back of my mind. But I've never felt that with Carl Rushworth. I've never felt when he comes for a cross, he's going to drop it. I've never felt when the ball comes into the area that we're going to concede a goal because of the goalkeeper. Maybe we have, maybe there's something that I'm forgetting. I don't know. He may have made a mistake, but at no point have I ever felt worried with him in the goal. He's made some great saves. There was one a couple of weeks ago, was at Oxford, a save that he just had no right to make from a header. And okay, it was my mate Pete said it was savable. It was kind of at him. He's got to save it. If it goes in, it's all. But it looked absolutely superb. It reminded me of the Gilks save, Matt Gilks save at MK Dons. I think he's commanded his area well. I think he's stayed relatively fit. I think he's got the respect of his defence. I think it's helped that we've had predominantly 3 at the back because I don't think he's been as exposed. Last season, Josh Griffiths was exposed an awful lot. And I think if you're not entirely comfortable, you've made a couple of mistakes and then you're getting your shot peppered with goals, it's really easy to lose that confidence. And look, Josh Griffiths has gone on to Portsmouth and not done particularly well either. Whether the spell here affected him, I don't know. It won't affect Carl Rushworth negatively at all. He's going to go back to Brighton. 99% certain that Carl Rushworth will be in goal for a championship team next season. He absolutely deserves it. He's a really, really good goalkeeper. A really good goalkeeper. And it wouldn't surprise me if Brighton aren't eyeing him as a long-term replacement. He's young. Keepers in the Premier League don't normally come to kind of first team football until 27, 28, 29. So you might not see him playing at that level for a while. Bold shout, but if he's in the England under 21s now, that means he's already one of the best young goalkeepers in the country. I can see the potential for him to go on and play for England. I genuinely can. I think he's had a good season, a really good season for us. And yeah, he would be, if you rate 1, 2, 3, he would be number 2 for me. So finally, player of the year. And this is there's 2 people here who have cropped up, and I nearly did a 5. So before I go to number 1, I'm going to pick on this. Andy Blackburn, morning, mate. Good morning, mate. I think Jackson must be a front runner for player of the season. Richard Cross, injuries, appearances stopped Jackson getting it. And those 2 points almost make up exactly what probably I should have said at the top of the show, because Adam Jackson would have been a very close 5th for me. I think with Adam Jackson, there's just 1 or 2 games where there was Bolton away where he gave away a silly penalty. There was Fleetwood away where probably he was to blame for both goals. But other than that, Adam Jackson's had his best season in a Lincoln City shirt because he's stayed fitter for longer. He's an absolute warrior. He's one of the players who's out of contract at the end of the season that I would absolutely sign on. And there was a hint, Mark Kennedy in his post-match interview said something about Adam Jackson, he's really suited to this level. And it just made me think that he's the sort of player I think that we could easily sign on. If Joe Walsh goes in the summer, we keep PoTY O'Connor, we keep Sean Rowan, we keep Lewis Munsma, keep Adam Jackson as well. You've then got 4 centre-backs. You don't have to worry massively about another centre-back because TJ right on the right or in the middle, I don't think we need to worry. For me, we keep Adam Jackson. I think he's been really good. I really like Adam. I like him as a person. I've met him a couple of times. I met him at the Priory not long back, and he's got a great sense of humour. There was a little bench at the front where we had to sit for this book award, and we sat on it, and I said something to him, and he said something to me, and I was like, "Oh, I'll avoid the joke about the bench then, Adam." And he just took it in such good faith, such good fun, good humoured, down to earth. But I think that he could be a big player for us if we can keep him fit for 35, 38 games, alongside defenders like Sean Rowan and PoTY O'Connor playing 40 odd games. I think he's a big part of the squad. But he's not my number 1. We have mentioned the number 1. Already just a moment ago. He's my player of the year. I think he's been an absolute warrior this season. That's PoTY O'Connor. I really like PoTY. I remember him moving over to Leeds. I remember writing about him for Football League World at the time. He went on loan to Blackpool, got sent off, scored and got sent off in a cup tie against Arsenal. Then he went on loan, I think, to Bradford, then moved to Bradford permanently. I remember just keeping an eye thinking he's going to be a player at this level. And there was quite a few at Leeds at the time. There was Leif Davis, who is, I think, at Ipswich. Was another one. There was Conor Shaughnessy, I think, who has been at Burton and Mansfield, who I thought might make a decent player as well. They had a really good under-23 setup at the time. And I remember PoTY was one that kind of stood out. We used to have to watch some under-23 highlights and clips and things as well. So when he signed, I was really excited. And it was the first sign in the summer. I was on holiday. I remember it coming through. I'd heard whispers that Sheffield Wednesday were interested in him, and he came here. Whether Sheffield Wednesday were after him, whether it was to do with the fact that he was going to, almost certainly play 46 games. Again, there was some resistance, wasn't there? Bradford fans had said he's got a red card in him. He's got an error in him. He hasn't got a lot of pace. And first game of the season, Exeter, where we played a really high line, and Nombi and Giovanni Brown absolutely tore us to pieces. And people were sort of saying, "Oh, I don't think much of that new centre back." And I don't know. I never judge on one game. I judge on 10, 15, 20. I judge a signing on 46 games or 2 seasons. And I just think I think we're in a position now where we can judge PoTY O'Connor as a really, really good League One centre back. Really good League One centre back. He's young, he's strong, he's a leader. I mean, I've seen little bits from him off the ball that really strike me. I think Sean Rowan went down injured in a game, and we had pressure on us at the time, and he's like picking Rowan up rather, and kind of, come on, we need to get through this moment, then you can go down. And after the ball had gone, it was then that Rowan went down. We've got to fight through it. I love that spirit. There was Derby where he went down. He'd clearly injured, but he did not want the physio on because he didn't want treatment and didn't want to have to go off. He was taking a minute, and the physio came over, and I thought he was going to get in a fight. I think it was the Derby physio, and pushed him away, shouting. And do you know what? It's that, because it's commitment. And I think it goes all the way back to the Ben House talk at the top of the show, doesn't it? That when you talk about commitment, when you talk about 100%, it should be a given, and it isn't always a given. PoTY O'Connor's not a player that I've ever seen a goal affect. And I've said it with Sean. TJ, I think sometimes is a player who, the atmosphere can affect a little bit. Younger players, perhaps. I don't see that with PoTY at all. Not one little bit. What I see with him is a player who, in a year or two, like Regan Poole, may well see his contract running down and move into the Championship, because, again, I think he's got the ability. I think he's going to be a player that will be hard to keep. I think he's the player of the season, in my opinion, this year, when there have been, 4, maybe 5 people that could have got it, that could stake a claim for it, that he has stood out. And I just think, with a year further down the line, I think we'll have another lone keeper next year. We'll play 3 at the back again next year. And I just think that with PoTY O'Connor in the middle of that 3 at the back, with a Sean Rowan on the left, or an Adam Jackson on the right, or a Lewis Monsma, or a TJ Ioma, or PoTY playing on the left of it, I think that we would still look a solid prospect. And for me, that goes all the way back into this being a decent season. It has been a decent season. It's a really decent season if we build on it, and that's the key. So the players that I've mentioned, Ben House, he'll be here next year. Regan Poole won't. PoTY O'Connor will. Carl Rushworth won't. Adam Jackson hopefully will. 3 of the top 5 performers. But Ethan Arahan, I think, can also be lumped into that now. He's not in the Player of the Year running, obviously, because he's only recently signed. But there's a spine all of a sudden: House, Arahan, O'Connor, Jackson. And for me, that's always the first thing. The first thing to do with any successful team is find a spine and be hard to beat. It is. I remember, that was how Arsenal became such a force at the end of the 80s. What was the joke? 1-0 to the Arsenal. You can't break them down. You can't beat them, and they'll always spawn a goal. And it's the spawning the goal that hasn't always been easy for us. But I think that we're a really tough side. I think that's why in the Player of the Year shout, potentially 5. I've named 4, but potentially 5. And one's a goalkeeper and 3 are defenders who have been playing centre half. Tells you the type of season we've had. Not a bad one, just a defensive one. Right, so let's go all the way back up to the top of some of these comments and see what we've missed. So Matthew Walker, I've been critical of MK's style of play this year, but sadly was perfectly suited to us, and what MK has done to us: hard to beat, well organised, very hard working. Special mention to Sorensen, who I personally think has done a fantastic job at right wing back, considering it's not his position. It shows why he'd be a great squad player to keep for next year. Always gives it his all. Reminds me of John Schofield. Interesting on Lasse Sorensen, actually, because I actually thought he had a decent first half. And then I went down at half time, and people were slating him. Oh, we need to get our right back fit sooner rather than later. When's Ayoma back? Sorensen's a liability. It's funny how opinions on Sorensen are so very, very divided. I remember at the beginning of the season with somebody who shall remain nameless out of respect, but I remember saying to him, Sorensen started brilliantly. And I said last season to this guy, Sorensen is a decent player. And then I went away to Shrewsbury and he came on at right back or right wing back and he was woeful. And I remember just thinking, it's a curse. Lasse Sorensen is a League One footballer. And he's not a first team League One footballer, in my opinion. You wouldn't go into a season with him as one of your 2 holding central midfielders. Well, actually 2 holding central midfielders you might, but as your right wing back or one as a 2 in a I don't know, like a 3-4-3, the 2 in the middle. You wouldn't do it because he's probably not quite that type of player. But in terms of effort, endeavour, energy, I do like Lasse. It's interesting. He reminds me, not in the type of player he is, but in the kind of the profile in terms of his personality of Jake Sheridan quite a bit. Because Jake Sheridan was what I used to call a trier. It didn't always come off for him. When it did come off, everyone was delighted for him. I don't think there's any player in the squad that fans want for it to work as much as Lasse Sorensen. I really don't think so. Morning to Babs, morning to Richard Cross. On the Plymouth game earlier in the season, apparently one Plymouth fan said to me, I don't know how he came away from Lincoln with a point. Same. Richard Cross says, do you think that teams really have bogey teams who they never get a result against? No, I think that it comes across like that. I mean, I was used to think Plymouth were one, Rochdale were one. I think it comes in, comes and goes. I think sometimes it can be harder to get results against local rivals, but I think sometimes it's just perception, to be honest. So Richard said Rushworth, Poole or O'Connor for Player of the Year. Matthew Mand, O'Connor, Rushworth and House, top 3 choices. Charlie says Ben House is my favourite of the season because of his work ethic and press, but he isn't Player of the Year. Richard says, do you think if someone came in for House in the summer, we'd miss him, or is he easily replaced? I don't think he's easily replaced. I don't think centre forwards with his level of intelligence that can play as he does are easily replaced. I think that they are probably a little bit more abundant now than they were 20 years ago. I think a defensive centre forward 20 years ago was basically labelled as shit centre forward because you had to be the fox in the box. And so few teams play that now. So few teams can accommodate a Jonson Clark-Harris, for instance, because he comes alive in the box, but that means you've got 10 players doing the job of 11 out of the box. Because of the way football's changed, it's more possession based, there's much more running to do, there's much more kind of transitional play. I think it's harder for those kind of players that come alive in the box to do well. Gary Lineker, I think, would struggle in the current game. I really do. Mike Downs, hi mate, I hope you're all right. Richard Cross, Virtue for captain next season. If we can sign him, not for me, O'Connor all day long. If we sign Virtue, still doesn't change that. O'Connor. Let's have a look. Andy says, I wouldn't agree with PoTY getting. I think that was PoTY getting stick early doors, but he's been a wonderful free signing. And Richard says, I really think if we can play 3-4-2-1 formation with 2 good wing backs next season, we can finish in a higher position. Yeah, I actually like the idea of the old 3-5-2, which I don't know what you'd call it now. 3-2-3-2. I don't know. 3-2-3-2. It's all. I'd like to see us go 2 up top with a House and a Mandrew. So a House doing the pressing and a Mandrew doing the magic with wing backs who can combine the jobs that the wing backs and the wingers have been doing for us this year. And I think that's where the disappointment has been, really, hasn't it? Is the wingers, because when you look at goals and assists, you should expect to see our wide players in there, because in a 3-4-3, effectively, they're almost tucking in at times with the wing backs coming over and overlapping. So they should be getting more goals. I'm not just saying it because he's gone, but Jack Diamond scored, 2 from open play in the league, and they were both against Bristol Rovers. I think all these others were penalties, bar one against Everton in the Cup. It's not good enough. There wasn't a huge amount of assists from him. Charles Vernon been in and out of the side, but again, not getting a goal. Shadipo's got 1. Harder to judge him because he's only been in since January and he's been in and out of the side. Mandrew was kind of classed as a winger, but isn't. Ted Bishop has played out there, but isn't. We've gone into the season probably a little bit low on wide attacking players, and Mark Kennedy's got to make the decision whether he tries to recruit heavily in that area and sticks with the same plan, or whether he looks at recruiting wing backs and trying to kind of load up through the centre. I think if we've got the flexibility, it's nice, but to have the flexibility, you then have to have wingers in your squad that might not play if you go 3-5-2. So I'm not sure how he goes, to be honest. Steve Turner thinks Ethan Arahon will be captain next season. Interested, who do you think will be captain next season? I genuinely think PoTY O'Connor, but Ethan would be a good shout. Matty Virtue, if we were to sign him, which looks 50-50, would be a decent shout as well. So there we go, a little bit of chatter about Lincoln City's Player of the Year. There'll be a couple of podcasts coming out for you, so keep an eye out for those on all your usual podcast places. Charlie's going to be putting another preview. We're soon going to be looking at kind of putting our plan together for next season as well. So if there's anything you'd like to see in terms of shows and that sort of thing, do give us a shout. Is there a feature on the podcast you'd like to see? What do you like that we've done this season? What don't you like we've done this season? Always drop me a message and kind of let me know. Don't be too harsh. And about the site as well, about the written content, what works, what doesn't, what do you like to see? Do you like all the history stuff? Like the old matches and the headlines and that, because I love writing them, but I don't know if people actually enjoy reading them or not. I'm not going to stop doing them, so it doesn't really make a difference, I suppose, does it? So that's that. I've got a nice short walk home now in what feels like quite nice sunshine. It's certainly picked up. Bit of work to do wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I really hope you have not just a great day, but a great Easter weekend, and hopefully come end of play Monday, it'd be nice to have 6 points on the board, and 52 would mean that a couple of defeats for Accrington would make us more or less mathematically safe, and that would be really nice going into the last few games of the season. I think that's about all, isn't it? Not the Imps.